So today we're going to try something a little different. This is the pilot for a new show that'll hopefully mean more videos for you and a more regular stream of content from me. Because as we all know, YouTube hates small creators who only make one video a month. The show is called Inspiration, Inebriation. Unlike my more scripted videos and video essays, this is more of a conversation. It's a show where I sit down with a guest from a creative field and we talk about a story that's deeply impacted and inspired them, whether that comes in the form of a book, movie, video game, or something else. The guest also has to choose a drink that goes along with the topic we're discussing, so as we delve deeper and deeper into that topic, we're also delving deeper and deeper into a state of inebriation. If that doesn't sound like your cup of tea, then these videos will always be clearly labeled Inspiration, Inebriation, so you can just skip them and just wait for the next video essay. The idea is to alternate and ideally have a new video every 2 weeks instead of every 4 weeks. My first drinking buddy is Paris Ericksen, who, like me, is an author. Together we drink Japanese whiskey and discuss his chosen inspiration, Joseph Campbell's The Hero with a Thousand Faces. In the future, it's my objective to do these in person, so you can see me and the guest sitting and drinking together at a table. But for now, we live in the era of coronavirus. So it's isolated, it's digital, and I don't like the audio quality that much. But without further ado, here is a very, very stylish intro card. Let's get into it. Hello! With me is world-renowned, famous author, Paris Ericksen. How are you?
Wow, I wonder if I'll ever get that introduction ever again. But it felt natural. It felt right.
Yeah. You
to
project what you want from the universe.
What an accolade! Wow, it's
Yeah.
it's how I feel on the inside. Yeah. Hey everyone, I'm Paris. I am none of those things, but I am here, and showing up is half the battle, right? So, I'll show up as a world's class writer. Yeah.
There you go. So the drink of choice tonight is Suntory. Oh, my background's ruining it.
Oh, allow me.
Suntory whiskey.
Yes.
As chosen
Yes.
by the guest. So why'd you choose this, Paris?
Wow, there's so much that I want to say about this. Well, firstly, I think that both of us are not. I think both of us are not like whiskey drinkers, but I am not even low key a huge fan of Japanese culture, and it is purely not based on any knowledge of whiskeys whatsoever. But Suntory is one of the most famous Japanese drinks brands, and this particular whiskey is Suntory Toki, which Toki means time, which, Suntory time is an ageless whiskey, apparently. I don't know. I watched this one video reviewing it, and the guy was having a sip, and he listed off every single fruit. He's a bit of grapes, bit of grapefruit, bit of banana, a little bit of peach, pear, apple, lychee, and to me, it just tastes
It tastes better than Valentine's, so
yes.
Oh yeah, there you go.
No, I think it tastes alright, good. But I kind of did some research into it. So Suntory is one of the oldest distillery brands in Japan, and it's really famous. If you go to Suntory, Suntory is. If you go to Suntory, you go to Japan, Suntory is everywhere. And I just something about just the nuance of Suntory time. It's made famous by Bill Murray in Lost in Translation. I don't know if you've seen that.
Ages ago. Definitely
yeah.
Don't know it well enough to tell you what he drank.
Yeah,
I do know what he said at the end, though. So.
Well, that's good. He does an ad in the film where he's got the Suntory and he's Suntory time, and it's stuck with audiences from that. Apparently that actually made Suntory famous in the West. But yeah, so that's I guess I chose it just Japanese fandom
Oh, there
ish.
you go.
That's it. And it makes me seem a little bit more interesting, but that's all an illusion. It's
Oh,
just
yeah. You are so deeply interesting.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, and I'm unlike you. I've also I'm just chasing the bad tastes away with Sapporo. So
which you didn't inform me you were doing. So now I'm just sitting here with my lovely chilled. What's it called? Suntory.
Well,
yeah, there you go. Whew.
The Spartan way to do it.
Ugh. Yeah, this ain't Sparta. Okay. So the storytelling property book of choice that you've gone for that means something to you as a storyteller and world-renowned, world-famous author who's done book tours from India to London was The Hero of 1,000 Faces by Joseph Campbell. Famous originator of the hero's journey that is now part of kind of the theory of narrative pretty much anywhere you study it. So can you explain, firstly, I guess, a little bit of why that is and what it is?
Yeah, of course. So Joseph Campbell's The Hero with 1,000 Faces is, I guess, it's like a comparative mythology compilation. It's like kind of drawing together a common theme of tempo in stories from multiple cultures through all time, and trying to distill a monomyth. So one important psychological, spiritual dynamic to how we egotistically, through the ego, develop our stories, things like that. So it was an early 20th century, well, I guess technically mid 1949. Joseph Campbell wrote this book, and so it's been around for some time, and it's on Time's 100 most popular, 100 most influential books ever, I think, which is cool.
I mean, if Time says it's influential, who are we to disagree?
I think wasn't Hitler Time magazine's Man of the Year in 1937 or some shit.
Something
I mean, I don't know.
Yep.
I think some people that are watching these videos will be like, "Ooh, it's on the 100 Time magazine," and they'll be like, "Wow, that's great. I'll read it." But I guess it's just to say that there's a lot of different people all across the spectrum that have been influenced by this book, and I think that it's something I'd heard about for a long time before I got around to it, and I think that it's been just so compelling. For me, it's one of those books that feeds into everywhere in your life, in almost a kind of uncomfortable way, which is makes it feel like a Bible in the some. It's very, if you allow it to be, I guess you can look at it anyway, but it feels
so beyond the kind of theoretical, we're examining stories aspect. You feel like it has a deeply personal aspect to it.
I don't think that it could have had the impact that it does without it being not it doesn't feel like they're telling you some theory. It feels like they're telling you a reality. They pull so many sources in, and it also has its own kind of storytelling to it. So you end up being oh yeah, this is truth, and that's kind of scary in the sense you're well, it's kind of dogmatic. It's very
singular
in it, and then you start seeing it everywhere in all things. But I think that you could, I've tried not to look at your own life through it, and I think there's some people that would really dislike it, think that it takes away from the magic of allowing things to just be, and if there is one way of telling stories, then so be it, but no, don't tell me about it. But I really enjoyed it nevertheless. Even if it is how it is and there was no other way, it was still really it felt really important to know it.
Yeah, because I did a bit of research before this, and one of the biggest critiques I've found on it, because there are critiques, is that it is very dogmatic, and that it kind of cherry picks everything it can that fits in its formula and ignores a lot of cultural backgrounds or a lot of cultural myths that don't fit into the kind of storytelling package that it creates. So I think there's always going to be examples that don't match that, but I think that's the case of for any story, really. Even every superhero movie, there's a formula, but there are different ways to do that formula, or there are some superhero movies that totally ignore the formula. You look at something like Logan, that's not really a superhero movie. So, I think it is really interesting, from a theoretical point of view, but I'm interested to hear how it's affected you personally, because I'm the kind of person who hears you're trying to put everything in one box and you shouldn't think in a box, and boxes are for cats. So
Yes, boxes are for cats, and that's really what I was trying to get at. And I'm glad you cut it to the chase.
yeah, exactly.
That's what the modern myth is. I think that actually, like, one of the things before we kind of like delve into that, like, if you would, I mean, not like you haven't read it, but like you're familiar with the style. When you were writing your books, when you're putting together your content, would you, if you knew that there was a way that stories were supposed to be told, or that the biggest stories of all time, they followed it, and it wasn't like a template, like your character must do this, but it had like follow some way, would you want to, like, would you feel like that's what you should do, like build that in, or would you be like try and challenge that and do something different?
Well, I think I love a good old subversion, but that's because one of my biggest influences when I was a teenager, growing up as a writer, was Lost, which is a TV show that like thrives on subverting expectations and having twists. To some people would think the detriment of the show. There always needed to be a twist at the end of every episode. But I love that kind of J.J. Abrams mystery box kind of storytelling. But just because I do that doesn't mean you can't tell a good story within that framework. One that I find really rolls into that formula and is quite formulaic if you just look at its plot points recently, was Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. But even though it is super formulaic, the way they tell their story and the way it's kind of emotionally impactful and the way they develop their characters, it still really hits home. So you can still tell a formulaic, really to almost a T story, while still having a deep impact on people who are consuming the story.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, there's a kind of really interesting meta with storytelling. When you, like, it's easy, like, when you sit back as a critic of stories, like, let's say you, like, not say you, like, never really, like, sat down and created one. Not that you should, or you have to, but if you haven't, you kind of, like, could look at things like, that's boring, that's repetitive, seen that before. When you actually get down to the process of writing a story that is you're presenting to a group of people, like, instantly, I think that you're like, oh my god, this is a cliche, or this has been done before, or like, how do I escape that, or like, how do I perfect that, like, how do I do it so people don't even notice what I'm doing, like, in it, you already start this kind of battle in your mind. I think one of the things the hero with 1,000 Faces does is it kind of eases that in like, if you were to read it and then to write after it, and not that I have, but you would actually feel a little bit more mindful and appreciative of the fact that, like, maybe there is this, like, current that you're riding on that isn't about so much about tricking people or doing something differently, but it is about reinforcing over and over and over and over again this, like, very common journey that people may or may not experience in their lives. I don't know, though. I just, like, I think that, like, it's almost impossible now, like, I mean, for me, I'm very rarely, like, taken aback from a twist in a film. I don't know, have you seen anything recently, like, that the twist, like, genuinely was, like,
I wouldn't say so, but I don't know how much of that is also based on just marketing on films these days is so revelatory. There's so much in a trailer that I don't think should be in a trailer that really kind of gives up the whole game a lot of the time.
Yeah.
So I do think a lot of that comes down to that. Like, God, even even Game of Thrones, like the final season when Daenerys burnt down King's Landing, it was such an obvious twist that it was a twist to me because I was like, they're surely not going to do that
Yes,
because
yeah,
it would be the stupidest, most obvious twist to do, and that's the twist they did. And I was like, why? Surely you could have subverted it and done something more interesting, but instead, nope. But I think one movie quite recently that was really surprising and did keep me guessing. There was no one kind of really big twist moment, but it was a series of just like what's going to happen next, what's going to happen next. Is from the master of subverting genre, Rian Johnson. Knives Out. I really, really
I've
loved
seen it.
Knives Out.
Yeah.
And I think that did for me, and loving Rian Johnson what The Last Jedi did for a lot of people, even though I didn't personally like The Last Jedi. But, whatever. That's fine. People can like what they don't like, or what they don't like. But, doing that, let's get into it, because for anyone who's not familiar with the hero's journey, we've just been talking nonsense for 20 minutes, or however long
That's
it's
the
been.
best. That's the way.
Yeah.
You've tuned into quality content.
Exactly. Got to keep you guessing before we reveal. This conversation has been the mystery box, and now you're going to find out what's inside. So please, Hero of a Thousand Faces is known for creating this kind of universal hero's journey that's pretty much in every story. Can you take us through that?
Yeah, of course. I can take you through like the basic.
And if you forget, I've got a, I've got a cheat sheet. Yeah.
You I think maybe like. Oh, hold on, I gotta move that to the side. I think that the best kind of way to approach it is like the basic, trying to over the basic line of it first, which is that there's a departure, initiation, and return. Like there's many steps within that, but there's always like a departure, initiation, return. That's and like anybody, I guess, listening to this being like, they wrote a book to say that someone leaves and then something happens and then they return. Like, why would you need to tell people that that's a thing? Like, obviously, that, yeah, for sure. I think that actually, like, a kind of more accessible way to look at it is like Dan Harmon.
The Story Circle. Yeah.
The Story Circle.
Hold
How
on.
did you know?
Dan
Harmon. Too far ahead?
Dan Harmon, who I want to preface is famous for the worldwide phenomenon that is the TV show Community, and the much less successful Rick and Morty, which only some people have heard of.
I heard what I wanted to hear then.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, Rick and Morty. And then I was like, oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I see what you've done. Very nice, very nice. This is really good. Always found this to be like a great way to storyboard. So it's like, number one, they are in a zone of comfort. Number two, but they want something. Number three, they enter an unfamiliar situation. Number four, they adapt to it. Number five, they get what they wanted. Number six, they pay a heavy price. Number seven, they return to their familiar situation. Number eight, having changed. So I think that like if we to like flow through essentially what the hero's journey is that there's an action or a thing or a person. It's just an what's the word I'm looking for? Like just an agent that pushes the hero or the protagonist.
A call to action.
A call to action. That's it. That's exactly what I wanted to say. Yeah. Thank you. Mm-hmm. And then from that point on, it's really like about enforcing what is necessary to achieve that call to action. And that is the initiation. So that's like all right, I'm going to achieve this no matter what, or I need to achieve this no matter what, or I'm going to die, whatever it is. They have to undergo a process. And then they end up achieving what they want most of the time, but it's never really like, by the process of initiation, they're so changed that the return to their home or to wherever they go back to, they're changed, and therefore they change the environment around them.
And the thing is, this is when I first heard of the theory of this, the return seems like it's the end, but in a lot of stories, the return is something that happens about 2/3 of the way through, and then the last final battle of the movie is people kind of having to deal with what they've kind of discovered or found. So a big, one of the kind of most archetypical examples of the story circle or the hero's journey is the first Star Wars. I think that's one that's really often cited.
George Lucas.
Exactly.
He loved the hero with 1,000 faces. Thank God for both of those things.
So I'm just gonna quickly, so people, the two people who are watching this video, have an example of what
we love you two people. Thank you. Thank you.
Of what the hero's journey is. I'll quickly describe it in Star Wars terms. So first, there is the status quo, which is the world as it normally is. So Luke Skywalker's on a farm, and he's farming, and he's kind of bored, but whatever, he's farming. Then there's a call to action. The droids arrive, and there's a message from Princess Leia. Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Can you do the scene for us? The Princess Leia R2D2. Please just give your best shot.
I don't know what the exact quote is, but
I don't care. Whatever comes to mind. Come on, do it for your audience.
Help me, Obi-Wan. You're my only hope. Because I don't know if you remember, but if you watch A New Hope for the first time, Princess Leia kind of has two accents. She has like a British accent and a normal American accent, and they kind of, depending on what scene she's in, vary.
I should have expected to find you holding Vader's leash. I recognized your foul stench when I was brought on board.
And then finally, in the movies after that, she has an American accent. But anyway,
I never noticed that, and I hate you for that.
Yeah, and there you go.
I made me notice that. Wow. Okay. Anyway, yes. Sorry.
So there's a call to adventure, which he goes and accepts, and he goes to find Obi-Wan. And so very often in this type of story, there's a mentor character. In this case, that's Obi-Wan. However, a lot of times in story, the character refuses the call. So Obi-Wan's like, we gotta go stop the Empire. And Luke says, nah, I want to stay on my farm. He goes back to his farm. His aunt and uncle are dead. And so finally he leaves. He leaves his normal world on Tatooine, and he goes into the special world, which eventually leads him to the Death Star, where he has to kind of go through this gauntlet to free Princess Leia. So he gets what he was looking for. He frees the princess, however, at great cost, because Obi-Wan Kenobi dies, and then they escape, and they return to the normal world, away from the Empire, on Yavin 4, where they kind of have to deal with the consequence that they've discovered the Death Star, which is this super weapon. So then they have to fight to destroy it, and we kind of get that whole denouement resolution after that. And there you go.
And a really important dynamic in that is that by virtue of the return, so like the retrieval, the succeeded task, which is to save Princess Leia, and then subsequently the skills that Luke has developed,
yes,
which is kind of shown in that scene where Obi-Wan is talking to him, being like, "Put away your guidance computer."
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, like that Luke will never be the same ever again. Like Luke is literally hearing ghost voices, and is able to like destroy this giant battle station because of his new abilities, and you see his character arc expand by the fact that he can never be normal again. Like it's not like we succeeded our task and now we're happy at home, happily ever after. It's like the task has
profoundly
changed everything.
His character,
yeah. Yes. And like, you know, George Lucas like has said like very openly, every bit of Star Wars, that first trilogy is the hero's journey, and like it's just so great.
Yeah, and I think one of the most interesting things for me about the hero's journey is one that I think a lot of bad stories forget, is that notion of having a price to things. I think a lot of stories, like heroes, will just go through the motions, and you know, like they take no damage, they don't change, they start the movie, they end the movie in the same place. Where, you know, I think a really good story has characters who want something, but in getting something, they have to make a sacrifice, or, you know, they lose something. A really good example of kind of the contrast of that is the Die Hard series, where in the first Die Hard, you know, for John McClane to free his wife and get back together with her, he goes through this gauntlet where he gets beat the fuck up, his feet get torn to pieces by glass, he has to, like, try and jump out of a building without dying. All of these things that, like, really take a physical toll on him that the movie shows. But then if you watch Die Hard 4 or 5, it's like he's doing all the same things times 12. He's jumping out of helicopters and taking no damage, and he's fine, and he just kind of nods grimly at the camera at the end of the movie, because, you know, he's done it again. So I think that notion of having to pay a price for the thing you want is, I think, something that really resonates in good stories.
Yeah, absolutely. That is like a great example of that. Like, that is, I think, like, and I'm just guessing, like, studios being like, they want to see action, they want to see John McClane doing what he does best, and it stops being John McClane being like a character, and it just be this Bruce Willis, like, sweating and like dirty and like destroying people. But you know, the like, I suppose if you were to like to continue his hero's journey, there would be the reality of him going through such a horrific, like, devastating, intense, world-shattering event, and then being with his partner after that. And like, that was why what becomes of that person. Maybe also it means that he realizes that he wants to like destroy all crime in the world. I don't know, but I think a lot of people have a lot of issues with stories that when they go through the trial or the initiation and they have the return, it's like happily ever after, especially when it comes to like relationships. So if love is involved, typically it ends on that point of return, and people like, I've been in a relationship and I can tell you that no matter what you learn, the integration of your lessons in a relationship is the most difficult, not the initiation into the skills or like the powers or the first test. It is, you know, a repetitively going through that process deeper and deeper and deeper. And I think that's kind of where the hero's journey, like the monomyth, especially in the book, it kind of touches onto that spiritual dimension to any journey that we continue to diligently follow.
Yeah.
To keep going.
So that was a cut because I don't own Zoom Premium. But you were just talking about how personal lives can be reflected in the same journey, and you were using the example of relationships and romantic relationships. Is that ultimately kind of why this book resonated with you to such a level and extent? Like, it goes beyond influencing the work you enjoy. Is it something that you kind of see reflected in your own personal hero's journey?
Oh, well, this like you've stacked a pretty like emotional sandwich for me to chow down on that one. And that's to say, firstly, I try my hardest not to see my life as the hero's journey. I'm not saying that I'm not like a little bit.
Would that be conceited? Would that be? I
am
the hero of this universe.
Yeah, I'm the center of my own universe. No, I mean, like, obviously, like, I have this kind of weird, like, level of hope or narcissism that exists, which is like, am I undertaking, like, the initiation of my life in my late 20s? No, it's like, no, I try not to see it that way. I think the dynamic of it that personally really spoke to me is that, and it's like, for me, whenever I do anything creative, especially if I'm writing for people, my intention is to like transcend my own personal experience and like communicate to something that we all share. And one thing that's really difficult in these times is like, what the fuck do we all share? Like, I mean, maybe there's like some really clear things that you could say that we all go through, but I mean, in terms of like the pacing of our lives, like, it's really taken for granted that we've lost touch with periods of our life as distinct emotional, physical, like, things that don't just go, you don't just do something and then something happens. Like, it's like kind of like when you turn 18, they're like, you can gamble and drink now because like you're an adult, but like no 18-year-old feels like an adult. I mean, they do for like 10 days, and then they're like, oh my god, what is this world that I've just come into?
I mean, I didn't feel like an adult until I was 26, so like, you know, that's
totally. And like, what does it take to feel like the thing that you've been told that you are.
Well, yeah, and I think, I mean, to cut you off and not be a good active listener.
Please cut me off.
Yeah, but it's weird because it is so different for so many people, right? Like, I know some people who were, I think, almost as fully formed when they were, like, 14 as they ended up now. Whereas, why did I take until I was 26? You know, like, it's weird that even on that very basic thing of becoming an adult, there's such a large and broad spectrum. And I would guarantee you that there are some namby-pambies out there who are, like, yeah, you know, like Jared Kushner types, who never really had to become adults.
Yes. I met this guy. I use this example all the time, which is ridiculous because I need to find someone else. But I was in Germany a few years ago.
Oh, you've traveled.
I've traveled some parts of the world. Why am I putting on this accent? I don't know. Anyway,
do you have a place in Germany? Do you hang out there a lot?
No. Yeah, I just this really gives it away. I'm doing not a German accent.
Yeah.
So we rocked up to stay the night, and I was with a few people going back to England, and I didn't know I was very much a guest. Being like, can I this dirty boy with a big backpack, can I stay here? And we got into the house, and this guy was late 50s, 2 grown-up daughters in the house, and beautiful large house. And this is a very harsh critique, but I was like, wow, you have so many wonderful things in your life. You're older, you have a career, you have a big house, you have 2 grown-up children. But talking to the guy, being around him, not that he was a bad person, but he was clearly emotionally a 14-year-old who just happened to look like a 50-year-old. And the thing is, it wasn't one specific thing that he said, but you could tell that his very approach to things was the excitement of a 14-year-old, which is a good quality to stay excited, but the emotional and practical social response to it. I think that there's many dynamics in the world where you can effectively you could say by privilege, you could say by circumstance, by random chance, that you can just stay the same person and people like you and what you do, and you don't get challenged along the way because there's people to pick up the slack when that particular challenge comes up, whether it's a co-parent, or whether it's friends, or whether it's a psychologist that you can send your kids to, or whatever it is, that you never actually have to look in. Or not to say that you do, but I think that you do. And I think that that is very possible to stay stagnant and not really change and not go on a journey, but simultaneously have a complete life, a life that anybody that would look into would be you've done a lot of things.
Yeah,
but
you
this
never
is
had a call to action, so to speak.
Or you never answered a call to action, right? When someone challenges you on something and you can shut that down and be like, nope, you're an idiot, fuck you. Or you can go, is there something in that? And then even if you look at that, it can be really painful, and you'd be like, well, I'm not dealing with that. But if you decide that you're going to do everything you can to face that, that is an initiating period. That's answering the call to action. You have to, once you face it, you have to continue, or it destroys you, it overcomes you, and then that transforms you in of itself. I think that's a really I think that I think that in that you can pathologize people. You can use the hero's journey to pathologize people, which is unfortunate. But I think that as a culture, it's something that we need to kind of grasp with. So the last chapter, and obviously people, you won't lose anything from having heard this. It doesn't give anything away. But the last chapter talks kind of after you've done the whole hero's journey, and it does, because it's comparative mythology. It goes through the myth of Osiris and Jesus, and all these different big mythological.
Well, I mean, Jesus is just a copy my homework but make it slightly different of Osiris, right? And I think Osiris.
That's what they say.
Osiris is I think a copy of something that came before him as well. So that resurrection myth is something that's been around. And still is, with the Matrix. All hail Lord Neo,
the one, the savior of the human race. Yes. So, like it covers all of this, and it takes you through each of these mythologies at each step of the hero's journey, and like how that kind of like what that is like for that particular character or god. But then it comes to this endpoint, and it's like, well, actually, all of these myths, like in the religions they were based on, they're dead, they're gone. Like, they're not relevant anymore. Like, they're not relevant anymore as in, like, of course they're relevant to, like, lots of people in the world.
Yeah.
But as an institution, like a globalized
They're not dictating
world,
anything.
they're like used to make money, to like but like really like the relevance of like this spiritual journey has completely shifted from a survival, like you need to be so in touch with yourself and your environment to survive, to like if you're in touch with those things you can monetize it. And I don't mean this in like a capitalism's in everything, but like it is actually like, if you really come down to, if anybody is listening to this, any skills, any journey, anything that they've ever really been through, we all think about how that's going to benefit us in the world that we live in. And the answer to how that's going to benefit us is it going to feed us? And how is it going to feed us? Well, we need money, right? So it's like, if I'm a storyteller, can I be like a storyteller that is paid to tell stories in libraries or something like that? Rather than like standing around with your community and telling stories so that like people develop into full-grown people at the earliest age possible so that they can benefit their community. I don't know. But that was the time of gods. That was the time of spirits. That was a completely different time. And in the last chapter, it kind of talks about how we switched from, and this is like, you got to remember that the hero's journey is really pulled together by Jungian psychology and Freudian psychology. So like, to those that don't know much, like I'll just give like a really brief outline. So Freud and Jung were psychoanalysts from the early 20th century, and they like were instrumental in like creating the dialogue of how do we analyze the unconscious mind and the messages of the unconscious for our conscious mind to digest.
One thing to note is that Freud, though he started the whole field, a lot of his theories have largely been discredited over time. So I think that's like a big caveat. And I think over time a lot of Jung's theories are also coming into question, which is why, I mean, it's important to note that, especially as this whole theory is based off that. But yes, please continue.
Yeah, I mean, I would say you're right to some degree. I think it's like to take a swipe at you. That is something I've heard many times, but I don't think that many people consider it to be like discredited as much as in like with philosophy, like we have philosophical errors and we like rise above them and we like destroy the elements of them that are like obviously no longer valid, but they're still the foundational, like they're the shoulders of giants that we stand upon.
Sure, exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
And like, so it's not like dipshit Freud.
Yeah, he wasn't.
Like,
exactly.
they were just saying crap. They were taking on like a real huge task with a lot of people around the world. Like, there wasn't just them; they're the famous. But Jungian psychology is like, and I'm not going to do it justice, but it's super interesting. And it's like very much about giving. I think it's like reinvesting time into the unconscious, into like the metaphor of unconscious mind. So like the best way to put it is like dreams. Obviously, dream analysis is like a huge part of Freudian and Jungian theory, and it's like, for those that remember their dreams, they might be like, I was on a surfboard, that the surfboard was actually a kettle, and the kettle was like flying along the clouds of Mars. And you're like, that's nonsense. Why the hell did I dream about that? But like a Jungian or Freudian, or depending on who is just like is looking at it, the analysis would be like, okay, what does Mars mean to you? And maybe to you that imagery represents like men are from Mars, or maybe it's like a previous Earth, a Earth that didn't work, an Earth that dried up, or whatever it is that you personally associate with this like imagery. That's where you draw the meaning. So your unconscious mind speaks in images, it speaks in themes, and those themes are, some of them are like kind of your Platonic like ideals of something, or they're very specific to you and the story of your life. So that like, I think that there's a lot of credence to that, and we can't really take away the fact that there is a lot of association with imagery that we have unconsciously, and that we run a lot of our interactions, our relationships, through our associations with the unconscious. So it's like, one of the way I think of it is like, when I meet somebody, I might be like, wow, this person's really nice, and I want to get to know this person, and that's really great. And then I might get really fixated on them. I'm like, wow, it's because they're so funny and they're so cool. And then I might like date them for like 3 years, and then I'm like, oh, actually, like, and look, I'm just making a joke here, but like, you know, analyzing what you want. I'd be like, they reminded me of my mum. Like,
oh boy,
this is like Freudian thing.
You're
or
proving
like,
Freud. Yeah, there you go.
or you're like, the way that they kind of ignored you a little bit the first time they met you, like, it spoke to like you as a kid when like your parents ignored you, and you associate that behavior with love, right? And you associate that the imagery coupled with the like reminder of this unconscious relationship that you're not actually conscious of, unless you've like done heaps of years of therapy, or you're like super on top of the ball. You are just running these interactions, thinking really basic levels of reason and logic about why you choose to hang out with who you hang out with, who you date. But actually, like, these psychologists, these like Jungian and Freudian, say that there's that development period of your life when you like structurally build on the development of your emotions, your mind, that then associates with all of the subsequent imagery, and then those things are like what drives you. And long spiel coming to a close, what Joseph Campbell says.
Don't worry, I've edited it for time. None of that will be in the video.
That is so good. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed it.
Yeah.
The times of the past, whatever that is, I don't know, thousands of years ago, hundreds of years ago for some cultures, was driven purely by the unconscious mind. So it was being in the world of dreams, in the world of like the shamanic world, the world of religious iconography, like this real deep, I am these images, and these images are me. And the yin and yang of like Taoism is like actually true in a feeling, rather than just like this, like, it's white and black with a white circle and a white black circle, and it's cool, it looks cool. It was like, this speaks, like, I am this unconscious processing. That time was when we were like existing, where we had to be completely in tune with everything that we observed and everything that was occurring with us.
Yeah.
But now we're in the time of the like the conscious, like the ultra logical reason, and that's because of science, which is like, fuck yeah, way to go science. Like, you can't like look under yin and yang with a microscope and be like, and see anything other than just like the paints or the metals that it's made up of. In the same way that people would look into the yin and yang within themselves and see like an infinite world of like duality. Science gives us this really logical reality that we can actually like structurally see. And like, I think that he was saying that there's no going back. It's not like the monomyth is like a looking back at like the better times when our lives were structured into a journey, but actually looking at how we need to continue to integrate like this, like kind of we've gone through the initiation of science and returned to this brand new reality, like the same reality is home, but we've initiated through reason and logic and the conscious mind, and now we're like having to remember that we're like unconscious, unreasonable, very psychological beings. And
do you think that's a good thing?
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, I think I'm a very pro-science person, which used to not be a political statement. However, in our day and age, where we maybe are reverting to how we feel, we maybe ignore massive worldwide problems like climate change, and we maybe really want to get a haircut, so we go to a governor's house with an M4 and yell at some cops.
Wow.
So
topical.
Yeah.
So topical. Yeah.
Getting in with the news. But so that's the thing, is if that swing back happens, is that a good thing? Because from where I'm standing, I can't quite look at it that way.
Interesting. Very interesting question. And it's definitely impossible to swing back. Like this is like kind of returnist theory of like, let's get back in touch with like nature and like, which I fucking advocate for, by the way, and I think it's a very scientific approach, but it's like we're never gonna go back. Like there's no going back. There's no like cutting off and living back. We know too much. We're so out of touch. There's okay. I'm gonna go into like more like woo woo, but it's like there's this kind of saying that human beings now, like with a detachment from spirituality, like spirituality, not religion, like spirituality is in like seeing one's life as like connected to everything and to everyone, blah blah, and being very unconscious driven. That we're like insects with our antennas cut off. Like we cannot interact with the natural world in the same way. Like when I walk out into nature, I'm essentially like I trek all the time. I love it so much, but I feel like a fucking child out there. Like I have no idea what is going on. I'm so loud when I walk that all the animals have run away. I couldn't survive out there without carrying all of my like scientific gear on my back. I'm not in touch with it. I might be not in the environment more than like 90% of people on this planet, but I'm not in touch with it whatsoever. And the only way to get in touch with it is a lifetime of being very much in tune with it, and that you have to see a value in that. You have to be curious about that. The only way you're going to be curious about that is if you like allow the imagery and the meaning. Like the forest is a spirit. There are like gods, like the panther or like the bilby are going to teach me how to be, and I'm going to pay attention. I'm going to listen to them. I'm going to let them have space in my world. But how I enter into the environment now is like, can I get a beautiful look of things, and then can I take a photo and like show people, or like,
do it for the gram, man. That's what matters, you know. Quantifying nature is getting likes on Instagram or story reacts. Guys, Julian C.F. Durand on Instagram.
Yeah. Yes.
But you, fun fact for the one person who is still watching this, are off all social media platforms. So you truly have thrown off the yoke of external factors when you explore nature.
Yeah, no, it's weird because I had this conversation. This is very much divulging tangent, so it'll be very quick. I've had a conversation with my friends, which is like when I'm out in nature with them and I like look out and I'm like, I don't know what the fuck to do when I look at a beautiful view. Like I've seen some pretty like incredible places. Like I've seen some of the most beautiful lakes, mountains, blah blah blah. And I've stood there and I've been like, I don't feel anything. And maybe it's because I'm depressed, but also, it's like I don't have a connection to the environment really. Like my connection to the environment is logical. It's reason. I think the environment is a beautiful and wonderful thing. Yeah.
You ever hugged a tree?
Hell yeah, man!
Yeah,
I hug
man,
trees
me too.
all
I hug
the
trees
time.
all the time as well.
Yeah,
so there you go. That's a connection. That's a connection.
I'm trying to connect with the environment, but that's such a human way to do that. Like I hug my mom, I'll hug a tree.
Hey man,
like,
the tree gets it. The tree's lived 200 years. It understands.
Yeah. Yes. I just think that the disconnect is permanent unless you're willing to commit your entire life to connecting to it in the same way. And I think that there's a different way forward. I think it's a sad thing to grow up in a world where we're in the middle ground. I think that as a culture, like as a global community, we're on the destructive path. And I don't mean that in like just pure like warfare or like environmental destruction, but I mean like we are very much like tearing down the structures that gave us meaning. Like we're like every time we put that microscope under something, we are like getting closer and closer to this like nihilistic reasoning that allows us to just be like, it is nothing. Like it just goes infinitely deeper and infinitely larger, and like the microscope will never give me any meaning. Like, and I think that is like that's what Joseph Campbell said at the end in not as lengthy words, but I think that there is like a journey that we're all on that we need to go through this process, and I think maybe that process might take a few hundred years or another few decades.
And what does he say is the conclusion to the process?
Okay, so he says that right now we're individual driven. It's not community driven. We're individual driven. So the individual, because of the reason and because of the where we sit in the unconscious, like the unconscious is community, the like conscious is like ego driven, right? It's like the id, super ego,
Is
ego,
that
whatever.
true though? Would you not say that you consciously have empathy?
Hell yeah, empathy.
Yeah.
Sure, man. What's that? I don't know. Like, yes,
But so
I
that's
feel
not,
what other
that's
people
not
are
selfish.
feeling.
Yeah.
No,
So-
no. But I'm still at the center of that experience. I don't look around me at my community and think everyone's empathetic. I think I'm an empath in a community, or you're an empath in a community. It's not like we are anything. It's like I am, and you and everyone watching this video experiences that their goals and their dreams are their own. Like, I don't know a single person that we know that has ever lived their life for the group, right? Like, they all have their own individual hopes, dreams, and there's no people that have partnered up to do the same job. That could be just our community. Like, there might be every other person is doing businesses together or doing something together, but we are very individualistic. And of course, if we can make a difference along the way and like connect, that's great. But ultimately, if we can just achieve our dreams and our best life, then fuck yeah, we've done that. And it's kind of like he's saying that, all right, we're really individual, we're really conscious-minded, we're all reason, we've left behind the unconscious mind, we've left behind the spiritualness of the genuine spiritualness of connectivity. Now, what happens is we think the individual changes society, right? But the truth is that society shapes the individual.
Yes.
So you experience community as an individual, but it's always impacting and changing. There is no individual, right? There is no real you or me, but I experience it that way. So what's going to happen is while we all think it's all up to individual change and individual development, which it is, that's all only occurring because it's, as a community and collective, it's occurring. And and I think that's that coming to terms with that dualistic nature, that you're not in control, but you are in control of how the community impacts you. But you always see it as you impacting everyone else. It's like, ugh. And I think that was a beautiful way to end the book, because that's where we are on the hero's journey as a society. And that is not the return. And that is not it's the fucking hardcore initiation. And it feels weird to be born in a time when we're not at the end of something. We're at the, like, horrible, destructive. It's like the end of an empire, it feels like. I know it's maybe not, and everyone might disagree with me, but the feeling very much.
Well, for me, yeah, and I wouldn't say empire. End of human race is what it feels like for me.
Yeah.
You know, climate change is coming for us all, and here we are.
Yes. Yes. The inevitable truth of the end of the ecological destruction of our planet. Which, do what you can as an individual to make a difference on that. But, yeah, I think that...
But ultimately, know that no matter what you do as an individual, it will never, ever, ever make up for the amount of waste and pollution created by, like, 6 big corporations. So, good job.
Yeah, thanks for giving everyone that beautiful feeling of uplifting. I think that we can definitely, like, give people a much more positive message than that, because that is all very true. And, like,
but this is where you and I disagree, because I think I've reached a point where I'm only optimistic if science says we should be optimistic, and science doesn't say we should be optimistic. Science says we needed radical change 20 years ago, and we're still not doing radical change now. So what's there to be optimistic about? Have a drink. Enjoy the final days of the human race.
Yeah. Yeah, look, you know what? You're right. Science, the best scientists have said exactly that, right? But one of the things you need to understand is like how everything is, and it isn't framed that they're not saying that the world ends. They're saying the world that we know it is.
Oh yeah, obviously. But do we want to live in the post-apocalyptic Last of Us world where we're having to fight off hordes of
zombies?
Bandits? No, I mean, it's like the real bad guys in The Last of Us, or better examples, maybe The Road with Viggo Mortensen, is, just the people are the monsters. People are the fucking, they just turn into cannibals and fucking bandits. And that's
Yeah,
what
but
we
we've been horrible bandits, pedophiles, all that for fucking forever now.
Right.
Like,
But, we finally got to a point where, we aren't in a state of constant war, because for the first 10,000 years of human history, it's all been war. Our hero's journey has all been war, and now we're getting to a point where it's there's still obviously conflict in the world, but it's much, much less than it was for thousands and thousands of years. So, I mean, I don't know, man.
I agree with that. I mean, I just think that, okay, what you're saying is, true and it's undeniable. There's no part of me that, in every day of my life doesn't think or, take that into account and tries to deny that to step forward. I don't think that's possible. What I do see, and let's, refer to the hero's journey, is that when you're in the middle of an absolute crisis, the worst possible stage, you can only use that information to view and to imagine what the future might be, right? It's like, imagine Europe, World War II. I don't know why we keep referencing World War II, but let's just imagine it. World War II, when, the Nazis were, winning, right? And everyone in the whole world were they're going to do it, right? They're going to do it. It's going to happen. And I'm not talking I'm not saying the environment is it's the same situation, because it's not. It's infinitely more complex. But people always just can only be as understanding as the information that they consume. And your opinion and your perspective is driven off that information. And it's not that it's not true. It's that what you do with that and how much deeper you dive into what it actually means to be a human. This is what the hero's journey gets to. The hero's journey is not about that. The interest is not in the conflict. The interest is in how it is overcome, of course, but what it takes in the transformation of self to achieve that. And, for example, Odin, a god, an actual god, not just a Marvel character, crucified himself on the tree of Yggdrasil. Maybe.
Wait, so the characters in Thor are based off real world mythology?
No, I was just making a really strange, elaborate joke.
That's good. Yeah.
He crucified himself on the tree to gain knowledge, right? And that is
and lost an eye.
And lost an eye. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And the thing is that there's no part of being crucified on a tree that is pleasant, and there's no part of being in that level of pain and suffering where you're going to be able to perceive what is going to be the reward at the end of that. Now, I'm not saying that humanity and society has a reward, but I can say that if humanity and society does find a way to transcend this experience, and that doesn't mean avoid it, because let's say the everyone who had this argument against Hillary Clinton being elected, right? They're it would have been nothing would have changed because it would have been business as usual, and no one would have actually made a difference, and then we would have driven ourselves down. I'm not saying that's what it is. I'm saying that's what people have said.
People are saying
that's why I'm doing this. And at the end of the day, the thing is, it's if we are going to face the world as it is, the reality of the world as it is, it's painful to look at what we've done to ourselves and to the planet. It's fucking awful. It's been happening for 100 years, really radically, and we've never looked at genocide as brutally as we have now. We've never looked at it and been did we do this? This is the first time we've actually faced our crimes as ever. Humans have never done this before. And if we're just going to sit back and be oh yeah, we fucked it and we're fucking it and we deserve to die, well then yeah, okay, sure, maybe that's what we will need to do. But if we face our crimes and we actually put our hands up and say, all right, what are we actually going to do now to not be that anymore?
Right. But so how much, to your point, how much as an individual can you make that decision versus if the society doesn't make that call?
this is the whole duality of it, right? What is society? What is the individual? Like, obviously, I know, and I myself, I'm like, no, like, okay, you can't just like buy right light bulbs and you've changed the environment.
Exactly.
Individual action does make a difference, though, and not more importantly, inspiration and the people that change the stories we tell ourselves. And they might be famous authors, they might be whoever they are. They change society, but society has changed them to do that. Like, there's nobody who's not a fucking nightmare that wouldn't say that anything they've ever done to change humanity hasn't been done through teachers and through people surrounding them and supporting.
No,
So
I'm a good human being just because I was born this way. Actually, I've had no journey. I've just been perfect my whole life.
You have the support of your friends. You have the support of your family. You have the support of people all around you, and you get that, right? But
yes,
that is not to say that you aren't an integral instrument in those complex dynamics, because you are the reactions that have been given to you, and they are the reactions you give back to them. But somewhere along the way, somebody breaks the habits slightly, and then everyone's habits break. It's really strange how that happens. It's almost inexplicable, and because we're not in touch with the unconscious mind, we can't really say why that is. But yes, I believe that it's possible that we can transcend this time. And I don't mean that so like humans get to survive and like we get to like continue building cities and stuff. I cannot tell you that the world is not going to get worse, because it might. Worse, that the people don't need to be holding on to the light of consciousness, of oh, that's really loud, sorry.
That's okay.
Sorry.
Is that your mom blowing her nose? Is that...
Wow, mums are the key in all of this. So the like keeping hold of consciousness and facing what we are doing and bringing our attention to that, and also being aware that there are certain things that we'll never be able to bring to the light. Like that I think that being willing to continuously, diligently look at ourselves, and knowing that is never going to be good enough, but that is enough. Like,
and so for you, that's kind of what the hero's journey, I guess, to bring it full circle, to bring it back to status quo, the return. It's about always looking to the individual. The individual can always improve themselves to make a change in this complex web that is society.
I don't know if the human beings can only do that. Like, I look at my own life, and I know we're like 2 minutes until we have to like jump out of the meeting, but meeting.
Yes. Welcome to the boardroom.
We actually get paid to do this. We don't. Please subscribe, Patreon to Julian, please.
And buy Paris's unpublished book.
You will not be able to buy that book. Thank you.
Yeah.
So it is a gift to my terrible friends. They'll have to read it. So I think that, look, I don't know. I'm not being like, I'm so smart because I don't know. But like, I don't know enough, because every challenge that I've faced in my life, when I've truly faced it, has fucking been painful.
Yeah.
Like, just awful. And the kind of experience that I would never want to wish on anyone. But then I also wish on everyone. I'm like, yeah, wake up to yourself, you piece of shit. But I'm like, oh, that's actually like really, like, how can I ask that of people when I myself am like shiveringly, like, I'm nauseous from like the existing, you know? Like,
yeah.
And I think that like, that is, you know, it's complicated, but it's worth fucking, I don't know, going through. I'll have if we do the same video in like 20 years, you know, and look at how we view this, you know that both you and I are going to have completely different perspectives on it.
So, Julian CF Durand on YouTube, come back here in 20 years, and we'll do a recap episode.
That would be really nice, man. That would be a great celebration of our friendship. How long would that make us be friends for?
Like 32 years.
That's awesome, man. That's fucking legit. You know what I mean? I would be glad to do that. I don't know.
All right, we have less than a minute, so I'm going to cut here. Yeah. So I guess to wrap it up, on that note, hey, we've been friends for 32 years when we do our 20-year reunion. One of the lines. I don't know if this is a direct quote from the book, but it was in a video recap I watched about the book. Is in the cave you fear to enter lies the treasure you seek. Which is another part of kind of the call to adventure and, you know, the trials of having to get the thing you want once you leave the status quo. And I think that's probably one of the things that resonated most with me about the hero's journey, and I think is something why maybe a lot of people never answer the call, as you say, or never change or challenge themselves, is because going after the things you want is scary, right? Like, or trying to make change on a personal or global societal level is scary. I don't know if that line stuck out to you at all. It's just one that kind of really did to me. So, yeah, you drink your water.
That is the weakest quote in the entire book.
There you
I'm
go.
ashamed.
Thank you. Yeah.
That's all you got out of your research.
Sorry.
Yes, but you cannot just say, not you, I mean, like, you cannot just give that quote out of context, and not that you're intending to, but, because we've chatted for, like, fuck, I don't know, an hour.
Yeah,
but,
and this is just after a cut, because I don't own Zoom Professional or whatever, so, you know, just trying to segue back into it.
Yeah, the quote itself is, like, great for people to be like, yeah, like, that makes sense. There's not many people, I think. Maybe there is. Fuck, I don't know. I live in a bubble. But most people would not be like, would not disagree. Not disagree. They wouldn't. Yes, exactly.
They would agree.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you. That being said, no one really knows what they're actually like. People are like, I fear snakes. I'm scared of spiders. Like, I'm scared of losing my job. But like the emotional dynamic of your like entire life history, the fact that you carry your entire being and all of your memories in a single body in every single moment, and you can reference any single one of them, and you have absolutely zero understanding of how that process works. When you come to that cave that you're afraid of, that fear that you're afraid of is the thing that will completely cripple you emotionally.
No, yeah, I'm not, like, I know I kind of said it throwing shade, but I mean, I fall prey to not going into the cave, no euphemism intended, all the time.
Yes, unnecessarily sexual. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yes. The thing is, I've always been the jerk to all my friends that tells them to just fucking do these like things like that. Like, I'm like, face your fears, like, be authentic, whatever.
Yeah.
Like, it's like a thing that they didn't already know. And
but I think it helps. I think, like, that's the thing.
Dude, support, be there, be a friend.
I do the same for my friends, you know, and I have a lot of good friends who do the same as you, and I always find it, because even though it's like the internal duality, to have an external voice say, yeah, you should go into that cave and get the Sword of Destiny or whatever, it helps. That's why superheroes always have sidekicks.
Yes. There's this thing that kind of complements the hero's journey, which is Vladimir Prop, who was a Soviet folklorist, and he like broke down all of the functional dynamics of storytelling. And one of the key characters, which I really liked, is the Helper, right? The Helper is this like inconsequential character that just like helps for no seeming reason, but it's like they give the gift, and R2D2 for sure. Like, and like that is like, you're like, why? Like, it's easy as a drawer, it's programmed, whatever. But like, you're like, why does it help? Why are you helping? Like, you've got no skin in the game. Like, it doesn't make any sense. I think we're very cynical nowadays of anyone helping us, because they think that we think that they want something from us from helping. But if you're asking someone to do something like fucking face all of yours, you don't want to be associated with that when they actually do it, because they'll hate your fucking guts. Because when they're in the middle of that crisis, they're not through it. You don't just walk into the cave and retrieve it and walk out. You like have to like be lost in that cave for an indefinite amount of time. Like, I'm talking like years. Maybe it could be a decade. It could be fucking longer. And like, you have to keep every single day standing up and facing and learning and driving deeper and deeper, but also staying grounded and staying out and staying functional and all of these things, I don't want to put anyone off. I don't think that there's any other alternative to living as a human being. I think we have one shot at doing our lives. And I think when I see people that have not done this, have turned away in fear, I see them crippled by fear every single day. I see them living in that cave instead of like realizing that they had to go into it and get out and learn something. They just live there in this constant state of fear, because the fear is not the fear of facing the abyss. It is the abyss constantly tentacling into every aspect of their life, right? It's like, that is something that is so much more scary to me as an idea than actually like having to like be in hell, like to walk into my own personal hell. And I got to preface all of this to say that in doing those things in my life, I really can't tell you that I'm through that enough to say that it's like the journey you should take. There's this great parable about Siddhartha, Gautama Buddha. Sorry, not Siddhartha, Gautama Buddha, which was like, he's walking through this forest, going to this town with his with Ananda, which is like he's like essentially like his assistant, and they come across these people and they're like, how far to the village? And they're like, oh, it's just another hour. And they walk another hour and they get to another hut and they're not at the village. And the person says, they say, how long to the village? The person says, another hour. And it happens multiple times. And they end up not getting to the village, right? And they have to sleep in the jungle that night. And Ananda's like, why did they lie to us? And the Buddha essentially just says, if you had been told that it was like 2 days away from there, like when we were already ready to give up, you would have just stopped right there. You would have just stopped and like given up. And that's the whole point, is like no teacher, real teacher, ever tells you that you've done it. No good teacher, no matter what age you are, says you've achieved. I mean, they acknowledge how hard you've worked and they acknowledge that you've done something, but they never say that you've done it. If anyone tells you you've done it, they can go fuck themselves. Because at the end of the day, your life, the rest of your life is
as long as you're alive, you're on a journey. I think that's one thing for me, is it should be called the hero's cycle, and that's why we have sequels, is because the journey never ends until it does at the end, and you but once you've overcome one thing, there's the next thing to overcome. It never ends. There's always new challenges and new opportunities to learn. And new ways to grow. And I think that's kind of something that if you want to take as a writer, or you, one person watching this, want to take as a writer.
I hope that one person feels very special that we're sharing this, because I think if I'm going to be, I just probably saying that. I think if we're going to be honest about what this content is, which is like, a conversation between the two of us, neither one of us being like experts or anything, it's really bringing together all of our like current thoughts, feelings, all the things we've learned, and like sharing them in the most honest, straightforward way, which is like awesome. And like someone can take that and be like, feel like a part of this conversation, but also like destroy all of the things that we've said and take away whatever they want to. And like, I think that's great. So one person, hell yeah, for sticking in this long. I don't know how much you'll edit it down, but
probably not much.
Yeah, I'm not gonna read the comments though. Even though I like watch all your videos, I'm staying the hell out of that section. Even if it's like one person being like, "That was the worst content you've ever created, Julian." It's like, well, the common denominator is me, but like, well done.
So if you are writing something and you're writing a sequel, I think you don't want to be diehard, right? You want to make sure that your characters keep going through things and keep getting challenged and going through journeys. In the same way that when you and we experience life, we're always going through something new and we're always experiencing new things. There's always more to gain and more to lose, and I think that's something that's really important in writing. To go back to a point we made at the very start, is when you gain something, very often you lose something. And that's, I think the key to good writing is to always keep those characters developing and not leave them in stasis.
Yes.
Except if it's Indiana Jones for some reason, because that's entertaining.
Yes. That is one of the most satisfying scenes in cinema for me, is them riding off into the sunset in The Last Crusade. I know there was the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, but...
What are you talking about?
But that scene is beautiful. And that scene teaches us something important in the hero's journey, which is not mentioned, which is savoring your successes, being grateful for like the fact that you've overcome one thing. I think that you can't, if you're asking the world to like gain treasure or like to succeed, and you get what you want, but you realize it doesn't get you where you need to be, you should be firstly grateful that you got that thing, even if it wasn't what you really needed. Like, fuck yeah, you asked and you received. Fucking be grateful. And savor that success, even if it doesn't fucking give you everything. If you write a book like Julian, write 2, every time you do that, like fucking savor that moment and be grateful that that was an opportunity. I think that is just a big part of all of surviving it, because otherwise you just get depressed and like you're fucked. I'm serious. It just will happen. Like if you don't employ those 2 skills.
No, I know.
Into your
I've
life.
been in that cycle before of completing something and then it doesn't get published, and then you live in that space.
As I constantly remind you, and every time we talk about it, you've achieved something. You made yourself vulnerable to the world. You achieved something for yourself, and you.
Okay, this isn't a Julian pep talk video,
there are people that care about your content, and they'll be watching this. Hopefully, fingers crossed. But they will care to know that you do genuinely put your heart and your soul into what you do, and you do it really well. So, ultimately, like that is a constant reminder to savor and to be grateful. And not that you're not a grateful person or a saving person, but like you're definitely a driven person. And driven people tend to not savor their successes because they see immediately the area that they don't have the knowledge in, and then they just keep driving forward, and you keep driving forward. And even if you get a bestseller, I guarantee it'll be the one that you didn't want to be a bestseller.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, probably. Yeah, it'll be the YA.
How I Met Your Mother video. It'll be the How I Met Your Mother video.
Hey, that's a video that has value. I'll say no.
No, I agree. But is it the one that you put your most heart and effort into?
I did it was one of my first videos, so it was one that I'd put a lot of work into, because it was, I think, one of the first, and so I really wanted to like nail what I was going for. But I do think I've made better videos since then that have performed less well.
Hell yeah, you have.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Nah, but like, that's not to take away from that how great that is that that's succeeded. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think what I really like is, as you say, I mean, really, especially back then, I had no subscribers. I think I was getting like 10 views a video. And for some reason, that video, like a year and a half after I made it, spiked up and is still spiking up now. But as you say, like, me being vulnerable seems to have impacted a lot of people, even though some people it's negatively. There are a lot of people who leave a comment saying this video really touched me. It was really, not to be euphemistic again, but this video really impacted me, and left a mark on me. And so that's always nice to hear. So that's good.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
I'm infinitely grateful to like have the opportunity to just like talk about these kinds of things, and like, that this is your idea, and I know you should probably edit this out, but it is like awesome. It's really great, like just for me, just for an experience, even if there's no one else. As a best-selling author, who gets everything they want all the time.
Yeah.
This is like, I will go to bed being grateful for this. Like, this comes out of that constant journey, that striving that you do individually, but also collectively, because we're a community.
That's right. Well, I want to say thank you. We're going to end the recorded session of this podcast. We're going to do After Dark and Drink and Keep Talking, I hope. But if not, or even if so, whatever, thanks for your expertise. Thanks for making the time in what was a deep, meandering, probably very self-indulgent experiment.
Oh, so self-indulgent.
But
I
we
mean,
will
like,
see how it goes.
even like as far as it was a drinking activity, it was very self-indulgent. But yes, thank you to having me in.
To having you, yes.
I feel very honored to be on this platform, and one thing is like if you are interested in writing, if you're interested in creating, if you're a curious person about creativity, and if you're curious about mythology especially, which I'm ultra curious about, The Hero with a Thousand Faces, definitely give it a read. One thing I didn't mention is Neil Gaiman. You know Neil Gaiman, Julian. Yeah. Neil Gaiman
Got
has
his
written
Norse mythology right over there.
Neil
He
Gaiman
just
has
found
written-
out that he's going through a divorce over his wife's Patreon just yesterday. So that's exciting.
His
Topical
wife
news.
was in that the musician.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
Anyway, please finish your
Everything.
story.
No, yeah, sorry. So a big part of what he started reading the Hero with a Thousand Faces, and he stopped about halfway through, and he said, "I loved it, but if I'm doing all of this storytelling in this way anyway, and it's a natural process that we undertake to uplift and to remind humanity of its journey, then I don't want to know. I just want it to be really genuine and from me." And with the book that I wrote, I read, I experienced The Hero with a Thousand Faces after my book, and I did the same fucking shit. And you don't need to read it if you already feel like you're a creative person that wants to just create and like do it as genuinely from yourself as possible. But if you want to explore all these different stories that have done this and do it in such a way that feels really, what's the word I'm looking for when it's like, it's not satisfying, but it's like, you're like being recognized for something. But,
I mean, I don't know, but it feels right. Sure.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, give it a go. And like also, how can we not mention the Suntory whiskey Toki,
Sure.
Suntory time? That that is what created this content. Those two things, and then the two of us. So thank you.
Thanks, man. I couldn't have said it better myself, actually. I think that's a good way to end it. Yeah, I will not read it, though I know, I guess, a bit of the theory for that exact reason. I kind of want to write directly from the heart. But I've heard that in a lot of cases, especially if you're suffering from writer's block and you want to know what happens next in your story, that and the story circle, that's kind of Dan Harmon's version of it, are super helpful. So go ahead and do those. And with that, generic sign-off.